My name is Clara Brooks. I'm 71 years old, and the worst humiliation of my life came not from an enemy, but from my only daughter. I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. Angela's voice sounded different, almost cold, and what she said shattered 45 years of motherhood in a single breath. "Mom, we're leaving for Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house. I sold Dad's truck too. We needed the money. Goodbye." Then she hung up. I sat there, frozen on that stiff green plastic chair, surrounded by strangers coughing and scrolling on their phones, while my world collapsed. 45 years of sacrifice, of being a mother, a wife, a caretaker, reduced to a 2-minute call. The beach house that had been our family's sanctuary gone. The truck my husband Robert polished every Sunday until it shone like new sold, like it was scrap metal. And the cruelest part was not the money, it was the ease in her voice. The casual way she erased me, as if I were nothing but an inconvenience she could finally discard. But here's where the story shifts. Because instead of crying, instead of collapsing, I felt something strange. I smiled. I smiled because my daughter didn't know what I knew. My late husband Robert, the man she underestimated as a simple bus driver, had left me something far more powerful than she could imagine. Something I had forgotten, until that exact moment. And that secret was going to turn her betrayal into my revenge. Before I take you into this journey, let me ask you something. If your own child stole your house, sold your car, and threw you away like trash, would you forgive them? Or would you teach them a lesson they could never forget? Tell me in the comments below. I truly want to hear your thoughts. And while you're here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more true family revenge stories. Also, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing people from all around the world sharing their experiences. Now, let's go back 6 months, to the moment everything began. Robert, my husband of 45 years, died the way he lived quietly, without warning, at our breakfast table. That morning had been like every other. He served me coffee with cream, toasted bread with jam, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Good morning, my love." I smiled at him, never knowing those would be the last words I would ever hear from the man who had been my safe harbor. He clutched his chest mid-sip, his eyes wide with surprise, then pain. By the time the ambulance came, his pulse was gone. Just like that, my partner, my anchor, the father of my only child, was taken from me. Angela cried at the funeral, of course. She stood by my side, wiping her eyes, holding my hand, whispering, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of you now." And for a while, I believed her. She came over 3 times a week. She helped with groceries, drove me to appointments, even told me I should see a doctor for a general checkup. "You need to take care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say, smiling, sounding so sincere. I thought it was love. I thought my daughter was stepping into the role of caretaker, filling the space her father left. I was wrong, because as I sat there in the waiting room, listening to her cold voice cut me out of my own life, I realized those visits hadn't been about love. They had been about calculation, about paperwork, about getting close enough to slip documents in front of me while I was too broken by grief to read the fine print. And now the truth stood naked. Angela had never intended to take care of me. She wanted to take everything Robert and I had worked for, every memory, every treasure, and turn it into cash for her husband's schemes. The house she sold wasn't just wood and bricks. It was where Robert and I had taken Angela every summer since she was 15. Where we grilled fish on the porch, where we strung lights at Christmas, where Angela brought her first boyfriend, then her husband Edward. That house held every laugh, every birthday, every fight, every reconciliation. And she sold it, as if those memories were worthless. The truck she sold wasn't just an old Ford. It was Robert's pride, the last thing of him I had left. His cologne still lingered in the upholstery. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil every 3,000 miles, always parking it in the same shady spot under the oak tree. That truck was his second heartbeat, and she sold it too. But while the betrayal stung, something deeper stirred in me. A calm, unfamiliar strength. Because suddenly I remembered the manila envelope Robert had handed me 3 days before his death. "Clara," he had said softly, "put this in your dresser drawer. If something happens to me, open it only when you feel ready." I had tucked it away, too consumed by grief to think about it after the funeral. But now, as I sat clutching my phone, I remembered. My breath steadied. My daughter thought she had stripped me bare, but she had no idea Robert had left me one last gift, one last weapon. That night, after the doctor told me my health was good for my age, I walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer had a car, thanks to Angela, but I didn't mind. The city lights blurred past the bus window as I thought about Robert, about the envelope, about the absurdity of Angela's cruelty. Everyone around me had their own secrets, their own tragedies. Mine was waiting for me at home, in that dresser drawer. When I opened my front door, the house felt different. Shadows stretched across the living room, but they didn't scare me. I walked straight to the bedroom, pulled open the drawer, and there it was, the envelope, Robert's handwriting neat and certain across the front. My hands trembled as I picked it up, sat on the bed we had shared for decades, and slowly unsealed it. Inside were documents, deeds, bank statements, certificates, and a handwritten letter from Robert himself. As my eyes scanned his familiar handwriting, my heart stopped. My dear Clara, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I lived. Over the years, I invested every penny we saved. We don't just have the beach house. We own 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Edward live. We hold shares in 3 companies. You are rich, my love. Richer than you ever knew. And everything is yours. I gasped. My tears blurred the words, but I could still see the truth. Robert, the quiet bus driver, had been building an empire behind the scenes. And now, every deed, every share, every dollar belonged to me. My daughter thought she had left me with nothing. In reality, she had only revealed who she truly was and awakened who I truly could be. The letter slipped from my hands and landed on the bedspread, but I couldn't stop staring at it. Robert had hidden an entire fortune right under my nose, quietly multiplying our savings while I spent years clipping coupons, repairing torn clothes, and boiling chicken bones to make soup last longer. My husband, the man I thought I knew inside and out, had been a secret investor, a quiet architect of wealth. I picked up the documents again. There were deeds to houses in different neighborhoods, a small motel by the coast, even a condo downtown. And there it was in black and white, the 20-story apartment building where Angela and Edward lived. Robert had set up a company to hold everything, and I was the sole heir. Every signature, every stamp, every legal line confirmed it. I sat frozen on the bed, my tears drying on my cheeks. Angela thought she had erased me, but in truth, she was living in my building, under my roof, funded by the very man she had dismissed as just a bus driver. The irony was almost too sharp to bear. That night, I didn't sleep. I wandered the house in silence, my fingertips brushing the furniture Angela always mocked as old-fashioned. I stopped at the framed photos on the wall, Angela as a little girl in pigtails, Angela on her first day of high school, Angela sitting on Robert's lap, laughing with her whole face. When did that little girl disappear? When did she turn into the woman who sold her father's truck for pocket change? At dawn, my phone rang. It was Angela again. Her voice was softer this time, almost rehearsed, as if she were wearing a mask of sweetness. "Mom, how are you?" she asked. "I'm fine, Angela," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I wanted to let you know that we deposited your share of the money from the house and the truck. It's not much, but it'll help you for a few months while you look for something smaller." "Your share?" I repeated. "Yes, of course. We weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair, right? We need the rest for our investment in Europe. Edward has an incredible opportunity lined up. 30% of my house, of my truck." I almost laughed. "I see," I said quietly. "And when do you leave?" "This afternoon. Our bags are already packed. We'll be gone at least 6 months, maybe more if the business goes well. But don't worry, Mom. When we come back, we'll help you find a small apartment, something that fits your needs." Fits my needs. The condescension in her voice was unbearable, yet I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Have a safe trip, Angela." "Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much." And she hung up. For the first time since Robert died, I laughed. A sharp, bitter laugh that echoed through the kitchen. They thought they had stripped me of everything. They thought I would be sitting alone, helpless, waiting for scraps. They had no idea I had more power than either of them could dream of. That afternoon, from my window, I watched Angela and Edward load their suitcases into a cab. Edward's smug face, Angela's designer bag, their giggles and kisses. It was like watching two teenagers heading to prom. They never glanced up toward my window. They never waved goodbye. When the cab pulled away, I went to the kitchen and spread Robert's documents across the table. For hours, I read every line, every clause, every figure. The numbers were almost surreal. My husband, the man who once worried about the price of bread, had quietly turned us into millionaires. By the time the sun went down, I had made my decision. I could have called the police, sued Angela for fraud, exposed her betrayal to the world. But revenge wasn't about courtrooms or public scenes. No, my revenge would be silent, patient, and unforgettable. The next morning, I put on my wine-colored dress, the one Robert always said made me look elegant, and called Mr. Peterson, Robert's lawyer. He had been at the funeral, had shaken my hand and said, "If you ever need anything, Clara, call me." Well, now I needed him. "Mrs. Brooks," he said warmly when he picked up, "it's good to hear from you. How are you holding up?" "I've been better, Mr. Peterson," I replied, steadying my voice. "But I found some documents Robert left behind. I need to understand them. Urgently." "Of course, come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring everything you have." That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. In my dreams, Robert sat in his favorite chair, newspaper in hand, smiling at me. "It's about time, my love," he said. "It's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke with a strange feeling, not happiness, not grief, but determination. For the first time since his death, I had a clear purpose. I wasn't just going to take back what was mine, I was going to teach Angela the hardest lesson of her life. Mr. Peterson's office was an old building downtown, marble floors that gleamed under soft yellow lights, the kind of place that whispered power. I walked in holding Robert's manila envelope pressed against my chest, as if it were a shield. He stood when I entered, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, "please, sit. Let me see what Robert left you." I slid the papers across the polished oak desk. As he read, his expression shifted from polite attention to disbelief. His eyes darted across the deeds, the bank statements, the company registrations. When he reached the letter, he leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "Mrs. Brooks," he said finally, "do you understand what this means?" "I know it's a lot," I said carefully. "It's far more than a lot. Your husband built an empire. He owned multiple properties, including," he tapped a paper, "a 20-story apartment building downtown. And according to these documents, every asset is now in your name." I nodded slowly. "And the beach house?" "Angela had no legal right to sell it. That sale can be nullified immediately. It was fraud." "Then we'll take it back," I said. "Do you want to press charges against your daughter?" I stared at him, and for a long moment the weight of that question pressed against me. Did I want to see Angela in court, her face on public record as a criminal? No. That would make her a martyr, give her excuses. That wasn't justice. "No," I said firmly. "I don't want charges. I want everything handled quietly, discreetly. Can you do that?" Mr. Peterson studied me. "Yes, but may I ask why?" "Because," I said, my voice low, "sometimes silence is sharper than a scream. I want her to believe she's gotten away with it. I want her to believe she's free. And then, when she least expects it, I want her to understand exactly what she lost." His lips curved into the smallest of smiles. "I see. Then yes, Mrs. Brooks, I can make that happen." We spent hours going over logistics. He explained how he could quietly reclaim the beach house, transfer titles back into my hands, and secure the apartment building Angela thought was hers. He even mentioned Robert's shares in several companies, steady streams of income that had been flowing into accounts I now controlled. By the time I left, my head was spinning, but my heart was steady. I was no longer just a grieving widow. I was the silent queen of an empire Angela didn't even know existed. On the bus ride home, I watched people rush in and out, students with backpacks, mothers with strollers, businessmen glued to their phones. None of them knew that the tired woman sitting by the window was holding the keys to millions. They saw me as a frail widow, and for now, that was exactly how I wanted it. The next weeks felt like living a double life. In the mornings, I played the part of the abandoned mother. Neighbors would stop me on the street, their eyes soft with pity. "Clara, dear," my neighbor Aurora said one afternoon as I watered the roses, "is it true Angela went to Europe and left you all alone?" Yes, I said with a small, sad smile. She and Edward have business there. Aurora clucked her tongue. And how will you manage? We all know Robert didn't leave much. If you only knew. I'll be fine, Aurora. Thank you for worrying. And she patted my arm, reassured that she had done her neighborly duty. Everyone thought I was barely surviving, but in truth, I was weaving a web. In the afternoons, I sat at my kitchen table with Mr. Peterson's updates. One by one, the properties slid back into my control. The beach house, mine again. The apartment building, legally transferred to me. The bank accounts, consolidated. Even Robert's old truck, sold off in my grief, was quietly tracked down and returned after Peterson negotiated with the buyer. I would run my fingers across the steering wheel, still smelling faintly of Robert's cologne, and feel him there with me, watching, guiding, smiling at my resolve. At night, I sipped tea on the porch and watched the stars. Robert used to say that every star was a soul-keeping watch. I liked to think he was up there, proud of me, whispering, "It's your turn now, Clara. Show her what strength looks like." And I was ready. Ready for Angela to come home from Europe with her expensive suitcases and her arrogant smile. Ready for her to find eviction papers on the door of her apartment. Ready for her to realize that the mother she discarded was the one who owned everything she thought was hers. Because revenge wasn't just about taking back what was mine. It was about teaching her that betrayal has a price. And I intended to make sure she paid every penny of it. Angela and Edward left in early spring, their laughter still echoing in my ears as the cab pulled away. By summer, the silence in the house had grown heavy. I tried to fill it with chores, with cooking meals for one, with tending Robert's roses, but the quiet always pressed against me. Then, one humid July evening, the phone rang. It wasn't Angela. It was an old family friend, Marianne, who whispered in a conspiratorial tone, "Clara, have you seen Angela's Instagram?" "No," I admitted. I hadn't logged into social media in months. "You should. She's posting from Paris, Rome. My goodness, she's living like royalty. Expensive dinners, designer bags, rooftop hotels. Where is all that money coming from?" I thanked Marianne, hung up, and sat staring at my phone. My daughter was flaunting her betrayal online, turning my house and Robert's truck into hashtags and vacation reels. For the world, she was a glamorous woman with a jet-set lifestyle. For me, she was a thief parading her theft as achievement. I opened her profile. There she was, Angela, posing on the steps of the Louvre in a flowing red dress, Edward beside her holding champagne. Captions read, "To new beginnings. Business is booming." Underneath, comments flooded in. "Couple goals. So jealous. Teach me how to live like you guys." I laughed bitterly. If only they knew. By late August, though, the tone shifted. The photos grew fewer. Edward looked thinner, his smile tighter. In one post from Barcelona, Angela was alone, her caption vague. "Trust is hard to find these days." I could feel the cracks forming. In September, it happened. Mr. Peterson called me early one morning, his voice calm but laced with amusement. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, "I thought you'd want to know. Edward's investment opportunity collapsed. He was running a fake import-export business, and the partners pulled out. He's bankrupt. Angela's accounts are frozen in Europe. They're drowning in debt." I closed my eyes, imagining her panic, the glittering facade crumbling around her. Where is she now? She's still overseas. But from what I hear, Edward has abandoned her. Walked out, left her stranded. I almost pitied her. Almost. 2 weeks later, I got my answer. I opened my mailbox and found a thick envelope. Inside was a notice, stamped in bold, "Eviction." Not for me, oh no. For Angela. The apartment she and Edward had called their own, the one she redecorated with modern furniture and splashed across her social media, was under my company's name. She hadn't paid rent in months, and as the owner, I had every right to reclaim it. I sat at the kitchen table with the papers spread out before me, a cup of coffee steaming in my hand. I had a choice. I could rip the notice, pretend ignorance, and save her the humiliation. Or I could let it happen. Let her walk back into the country, broken and tired, and find her life collapsing in the very place she thought was untouchable. I thought of Robert, his quiet strength, his patient way of teaching lessons without raising his voice, and I knew what he would want. Not revenge for the sake of pain, but justice. A mirror held to her choices. So I signed the notice and mailed it back. Angela returned in October. I spotted her from my window first, her once flawless hair tangled, her suitcase scuffed, her clothes wrinkled. She looked smaller, thinner, as if life had wrung her out. Edward was nowhere to be seen. She struggled with the luggage up the apartment steps, only to stop dead in her tracks. Pinned to the front door was the eviction notice. I saw her shoulders slump. Her hands trembled as she tore it from the door, her eyes darting back and forth across the bold black letters. She sank onto the steps, her head in her hands. For a long time I just watched. The daughter who once told me to find something that fits my needs was now the one with nowhere to go. That evening, just as the sky burned orange with sunset, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, there she stood, Angela, the once proud woman, now reduced to tears. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracked. Can I stay here for a while?" I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch, let her feel the weight of what she was asking. And then finally, I stepped aside. "Of course," I said softly. "You're my daughter." She collapsed into my arms, sobbing harder than I had ever seen. I held her, my hand stroking her hair, my heart pounding with a mix of sorrow and satisfaction, because she thought she had come home to safety. She thought she had found refuge. But what she didn't know was that she had just stepped into the second act of her lesson. Angela dragged her suitcase into the hallway like a prisoner returning home from exile. I watched her eyes flicker around the familiar furniture, the floral curtains she used to roll her eyes at, the framed photos she once called clutter. She was standing again in the very place she had discarded, but now she saw it with new eyes. "Mom," she whispered, her voice raw, "I don't deserve to be here." I set her suitcase by the wall and handed her a glass of water. "Sit, Angela, you look exhausted." She slumped into Robert's old chair, her shoulders sagging, her face streaked with tears. For the first time since childhood, she looked small, vulnerable, and real. "Edward's gone," she confessed. "He ran off with another woman in Paris. He left me with nothing. Not even the rent was paid. I came back thinking I'd at least have the apartment, but—" She pulled the eviction notice from her bag, crumpled and creased. I don't understand. Why would they evict me? I was always told Edward owned it." I sipped my tea, hiding the truth behind calm eyes. "Property matters can be complicated. Maybe you should have checked the papers yourself." Her lip quivered. "I trusted him. I trusted everyone. And now I have no money, no job, no home. I only have you." It was almost laughable. Weeks ago, I had been nothing to her but an obstacle, an inconvenient old woman to be brushed aside. Now I was her only lifeline. She reached for my hand, her grip trembling. "Mom, I'm so sorry for everything. I shouldn't have treated you the way I did. I was blind, stupid, arrogant. Please forgive me." I let her hold my hand, though I didn't return the pressure. My silence was enough. That night, Angela slept in her childhood bedroom, the one with faded wallpaper and a creaky bed frame Robert had built himself. I stood outside her door for a long while, listening to the muffled sobs. For a moment, my heart ached with motherly instinct to comfort, to soothe. But then, I remembered her voice on that phone call. Cold, clipped, dismissive. "We sold your house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." And my heart hardened again. The following days unfolded like a quiet theater play. Angela shuffled through the house in borrowed pajamas, brewing coffee with shaking hands, scanning job boards on my old laptop. She muttered to herself about resumes, about interviews, about how no one wanted to hire a middle-aged woman with no real experience outside being a corporate wife. One afternoon, I found her hunched over the kitchen table, bills and loan notices spread like a battlefield. "They're saying I owe over $100,000, she said, her voice trembling. "Edward forged my signature on loans, Mom. I'm liable. If I don't pay, they'll take me to court. I don't know what to do." She looked at me, eyes wide with desperation. "What if I end up in jail?" I folded laundry calmly as if we were discussing the weather. "Then, you'll have to find a lawyer." "I don't have money for one." Her voice cracked with hysteria, but I stayed serene. Robert had left me a fortune, lawyers already working silently in the background. Angela had no idea. This was the lesson. Let her feel the abyss. Let her see what it meant to truly lose. At night, she cried into her pillow, whispering regrets I could hear through the thin walls. "I shouldn't have sold the house. Dad's truck. I was so stupid, so greedy. God, what have I done? During the day, she tried to help around the house, sweeping floors, cooking clumsy dinners, hanging laundry, like a penitent child. But the shame hung over her, heavy as the summer heat. One evening, after a long silence at the dinner table, she blurted out, "Mom, I'll get a job. Any job. I don't care if it's scrubbing toilets. I can't keep depending on you. I need to pay you rent. I need to deserve to be here." I nodded, my lips twitching into the faintest smile. At last, a spark of humility. The next morning, she left for her first interview in years, wearing a plain gray blouse and the same heels she once mocked me for keeping. She returned hours later with blistered feet and tired eyes. "They hired me," she said quietly. "Night cleaning shift at the office downtown, minimum wage." And then, almost in disbelief, she added, "I've never been so grateful for a job in my life." That night, as she left for her first shift with a bucket and mop, I stood at the door and watched her go. The daughter who once sold her family's soul for a European fantasy was now walking into the night to clean offices for strangers. It was poetic. It was justice. And it was only the beginning. The first week Angela worked nights, the house felt strangely quiet. For decades I had prayed for her safety when she was out late with friends, or later with Edward. Now I found myself praying again, but this time, that she would endure the humility of scrubbing floors without breaking. She returned home just before dawn, clothes smelling of disinfectant, hands raw from bleach. She'd collapse into the kitchen chair, too tired even to take off her shoes, sipping weak coffee before dragging herself to bed. "Mom," she whispered one morning, "I met a woman tonight, Mrs. Johnson. She's been cleaning offices for 20 years. Her husband left her with 3 kids. She told me this job isn't glamorous, but it gave her independence, dignity. She said something I can't stop thinking about." "What did she say, Angela?" I asked gently. "She said there are 2 kinds of people who end up here, those who never had opportunities, and those who ruin the ones they had." Then she looked me straight in the eyes and asked which one I was. Angela laughed bitterly. I told her the truth, that I had every opportunity, parents who sacrificed everything, a husband who pretended to offer stability, a family legacy I took for granted, and I ruined it. She just patted my shoulder and said, "At least you know why you're here. That means you can climb out." I watched her face soften in the morning light. She wasn't the arrogant woman who once waved money around like a weapon. She was becoming someone new, someone who understood. During the day, she searched for better jobs, though rejection after rejection piled up. "They don't want to hire someone with debt collectors chasing them," she admitted, her voice hoarse. "I'm poison on paper." At night, she mopped marble floors under flickering fluorescent lights. She cleaned desks where young executives sat during the day, the kind of men and women she once looked down on because she thought Edward's so-called success made her untouchable. Now she was the one wiping their crumbs, emptying their trash. One evening, she returned home with calloused hands and said, "Mom, I think I finally understand what Dad used to mean when he said, 'Nothing in life is free.' I thought he was just talking about bills, but he meant respect, dignity, family trust. Everything has to be earned." I nodded, hiding the smile that tugged at my lips. She was finally learning, but I wasn't finished teaching. Behind the scenes, Mr. Peterson kept me updated. Edward's forged documents, his debts, his fraudulent marriage attempt in France. Piece by piece, the case against him built itself like a carefully stacked tower, ready to collapse on his head. "Mrs. Brooks," Peterson said during one of our secret calls, "we'll be able to clear Angela's name entirely. She won't owe a penny. But shall I inform her now?" "No," I replied firmly. "Not yet. She needs to keep struggling until she truly understands the value of what she almost destroyed. Don't tell her a thing until I say so." When I hung up, I glanced toward Angela's closed bedroom door. I could hear her muffled sobs again. Part of me ached to rush in, cradle her, tell her everything would be all right, that she didn't owe the banks, that her father had left us a fortune. But then I remembered the icy way she had once said, "We needed the money. Bye." The lesson wasn't complete. A week later, Angela came home and placed a small wad of crumpled bills on the table. "My first paycheck," she said softly. "It's not much, but I want you to have it, Mom. For groceries, for the light bill, for letting me stay here." I pushed the money back toward her. "Keep it. You earned it. That's yours." Her eyes filled with tears. "But I don't deserve your generosity." "You're my daughter," I said, my voice steady. "But generosity doesn't erase responsibility. You have to decide what to do with what little you have." She clutched the money like it was made of gold. That night, I sat on the porch with Robert's old wine glass in hand. The stars glittered above, and I imagined him smiling. "She's learning," I whispered into the night, "just as you planned." But I knew the most important lesson was still ahead, the moment when I would finally show her the truth and force her to confront who she had been and who she could still become. The days blurred into a rhythm I hadn't felt since Robert was alive, though now it was different, heavier, charged with a tension only I understood. Angela lived like a shadow of herself, rising late, dragging her body to job interviews in the afternoon, then leaving at dusk with her cleaning supplies. Each morning she came home with blistered hands and tired eyes, yet something about her posture was shifting. The arrogance had drained from her shoulders. In its place was a quiet humility, even determination. One Saturday, I found her scrubbing the kitchen floor on her knees, sweat dripping down her brow. "Angela," I said, surprised, "why are you doing this? I already cleaned yesterday." She sat back, strands of hair clinging to her face. "Because I need to, Mom. I spent so many years treating you like a maid. I need to know what it feels like. I need to do this for you." Her voice cracked on the last words. My throat tightened, but I kept my composure. This was what Robert and I had prayed for, a daughter who would recognize the weight of her mother's sacrifices. That night, she placed a small notebook on the table. "I started writing down my expenses, Mom. Every dollar I earn, every cent I spend. Mrs. Johnson taught me how to budget. I used to laugh when you clipped coupons or saved pennies in a jar. Now I understand." I flipped through the notebook. Her handwriting was shaky, but meticulous columns of wages, groceries, bus fares, debts circled in red. "You're learning," I said softly. She smiled faintly. "I wish Dad could see this. He'd be proud that I'm finally growing up." I didn't answer. But deep inside, I felt Robert's presence more strongly than ever, as if he were sitting in his favorite chair nodding silently. Meanwhile, Mr. Peterson continued feeding me updates. One afternoon, his voice buzzed through the phone with urgency. "Mrs. Brooks, we've gathered enough evidence. Edward falsified signatures, committed fraud, and left a paper trail across 2 countries. With this, Angela can be cleared of every single debt. She won't owe a penny. Should I bring her in?" I looked at Angela through the kitchen window as she hung laundry in the yard, her fingers red from detergent. She hummed a tune I hadn't heard since she was a child, a simple melody Robert used to whistle. "Not yet," I told Peterson firmly. "Let her carry the weight a little longer. She must understand what true responsibility feels like before I lift it off her shoulders." He hesitated. "Are you sure, Mrs. Brooks? This is your daughter." "I'm sure," I said, though my heart wavered. "Trust me, timing is everything." The following week, Angela returned from work with a torn sleeve and a bruise on her arm. She had tripped on the wet floor at the office, fallen hard against a desk. I rushed to her side, but she waved me off. "I'm fine, Mom. It hurts, but it's nothing. Honestly, I deserved worse, after everything I've done to you. No one deserves pain like this," I said sharply. She looked at me with wide eyes, then whispered, "Except maybe me, for what I did." That night, while she slept, I sat by her bedside like I had when she was a child with a fever. The sight of her bruised arm, her calloused hands resting on the blanket, pierced me deeper than any betrayal ever could. "Robert," I whispered into the darkness, "how much longer should I let her suffer? She's breaking, but she's also changing. Do I reveal the truth now, or do I wait until she's stronger?" The silence gave me no answer, but in my heart, I knew the moment was close. The next morning, Angela surprised me. She laid 2 envelopes on the table. "One is for rent," she said. "It's half my paycheck. The other is for groceries. I know it's not much, but I can't live here without contributing. I won't be a burden anymore." Tears pricked my eyes. My daughter, who once sold my house and my truck without blinking, was now begging me to accept scraps of minimum wage as proof of her dignity. I placed my hand over the envelopes. "Keep them for now. But Angela, there will come a day very soon when you'll see just how much your father and I sacrificed, and on that day, you'll understand why I had to let you walk this path." She frowned, confused, but said nothing. In that moment, I knew it was time to prepare. Mr. Peterson would arrange everything: the documents, the deeds, the truth. And when Angela was finally ready, I would reveal it all not as a gift, but as the final piece of her education. Because sometimes the deepest love a mother can give is the love that teaches through pain. Friday morning, I told Angela to dress nicely. "We're going to meet someone who might help with your problems," I said. Her brows knitted with worry. "A lawyer? Mom, I can't afford one. I barely make enough for the bus fare." "Don't worry about that, just come with me." She hesitated but obeyed, pulling out a plain black dress from her suitcase, the same one she had worn at Robert's funeral. It hung looser on her now. She had lost weight from weeks of stress and labor. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting it nervously. "I look like a ghost," she whispered. I took her hand. "You look like someone who's ready to face the truth." Mr. Peterson's office was downtown, in an old brick building with marble floors that echoed every step. Angela clung to my arm like a frightened child, though she tried to hide it. We were ushered into the conference room, where thick folders lay stacked neatly on the polished oak table. Peterson greeted us warmly, but when Angela shook his hand, hers trembled. "Miss Brooks," he said kindly, "thank you for coming. I know this must be overwhelming." "I don't even know why I'm here," Angela admitted, her voice brittle. "I have no money. I'm drowning in debts that aren't even mine. If this is about more bad news, just tell me quickly." Peterson exchanged a glance with me, and I nodded. "Actually," he said, sliding the first folder across the table, "this is about good news. Please, read." Angela opened the folder, scanning the documents. Her eyes darted left and right, confusion clouding her face. Then her mouth dropped open. These, say Edward forged my signature on the loans, that he committed fraud, that I'm not legally responsible for his debts?" "That's correct," Peterson confirmed. "We've gathered proof from banks, witnesses, even from France. You are free of all liability. You don't owe a single dollar." Angela's hand flew to her mouth. But how? Who did this investigation? It must have cost—" She stopped, turning toward me, her eyes wide. I leaned back, calm. "I did." Her lips parted in shock. "You? But how, Mom? You don't have money for something like this. You—" I gestured to Peterson, who placed the second folder before her. "Show her." Angela opened it, and the color drained from her face. Deeds, bank certificates, shareholdings, a portfolio thicker than anything she had ever seen. She whispered, almost to herself, "The apartment building, the condo, the motel, Dad's company shares. These are all in your name?" "Yes," I said simply. Her eyes brimmed with tears. "You mean all this time when I thought you were poor, when I treated you like a burden, when I sold the beach house and Dad's truck, you had all of this?" "Yes." Her voice broke. "Why didn't you tell me? Why let me believe you had nothing?" I reached across the table, resting my hand gently over hers. "Because you needed to learn, Angela. Not about money, about respect, about responsibility, about love." She shook her head in disbelief, tears spilling down her cheeks. "So you let me suffer. You let me work nights, humiliate myself, starve for hope, just to teach me a lesson?" My heart clenched, but my voice stayed firm. "Yes, because if I had saved you too soon, you would never have understood what you threw away. You had to hit rock bottom to see what truly matters." Angela dropped her gaze, shoulders trembling. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. Finally, she whispered, "I abandoned you when you needed me most. I treated you like garbage, and you still saved me." I cupped her chin, lifting her eyes to mine. "No, Angela, I didn't save you. You saved yourself by enduring, by humbling yourself, by finding dignity in honest work. What I did was give you the chance to change. And you did." Peterson cleared his throat discreetly. "Miss Brooks, all your debts are cleared. Legally, you are free. Your mother has also regained control of the beach house and all properties. You can start fresh." Angela clutched the documents to her chest as if they were lifelines. She turned to me, eyes shining not with arrogance, but with a newfound respect I had never seen before. "Mom," she said, her voice steady through the tears, "can you forgive me?" I smiled softly. "I forgave you long ago. The question is, can you forgive yourself?" She broke down then, sobbing in my arms, not like the spoiled daughter who once demanded everything, but like the broken woman who had finally discovered the value of love. And for the first time in months, I felt peace wash over me. Robert's plan had worked. Our daughter was reborn. The ride home from Mr. Peterson's office was silent, except for the hum of the bus engine. Angela clutched the folders to her chest like a lifeline, staring out the window with eyes swollen from crying. I didn't speak. I wanted the truth to settle inside her, to gnaw at her, to reshape her from the inside out. When we finally reached home, she placed the folders on the kitchen table with trembling hands. "Mom," she whispered, I can't believe this. All this time, you were wealthy, and I treated you like—" Her voice cracked, unable to finish the sentence. "You treated me like someone disposable," I said calmly. "But Angela, this isn't about money. It's about what kind of woman you choose to be from now on." She looked at me with desperation. "I don't want money. I don't want apartments or bank accounts. I just want your forgiveness. I want to be your daughter again." "You already are my daughter," I said softly. "That never changed, but the way you honor that role that was broken, and now you have the chance to rebuild it." Angela nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "Then I'll prove it to you. I'm not quitting my cleaning job. Not yet." Her words startled me. "Angela, you don't need to punish yourself." "This isn't punishment," she said firmly. "This is my reminder. Every night when I scrub floors, I remember the arrogance, the selfishness, the way I abandoned you. If I walk away now, if I hide behind Dad's money, then I haven't changed. I need to earn back not just your trust, but my own self-respect." I studied her face. For the first time in years, I saw not entitlement but resolve. Robert would have been proud. The following weeks were unlike anything I could have imagined. Angela continued working nights, but she carried herself differently. She no longer came home defeated, but with a quiet dignity. She told me about her coworkers, women who had survived abandonment, poverty, and violence, yet still laughed together while scrubbing toilets at midnight. "Mom," she said one morning, "these women are stronger than anyone I ever met in Edward's world of fake investors and empty promises. They work hard, they support each other, and they don't pretend to be something they're not. I want to be like them." In the afternoons, she helped me tend the garden, something she had once scoffed at as old lady work. She found peace in watering the roses, trimming the hedges, sitting in the soil with her hands dirty. One evening, she surprised me by preparing a full dinner: roast chicken, potatoes, and apple pie. The food wasn't perfect, but the effort brought tears to my eyes. "Do you remember, Mom?" she asked as we sat down. "When I was a teenager, I used to roll my eyes at your dinners. I thought you were wasting time cooking when we could just order pizza. Now I get it. A meal isn't just food. It's love, it's presence, it's what holds a family together." I nodded silently, letting her realization settle. But the greatest change came one night when she returned from work with a small envelope. She placed it on the table and pushed it toward me. "What's this?" I asked. "My savings," she said. 3 weeks of pay. I want to contribute to the house, not because I owe you rent, but because this is my home too. And I want to take care of it, just like you and Dad always did." I opened the envelope and saw the crumpled bills inside, barely enough to cover utilities for a week. Yet they were worth more than all the properties Robert had left behind. I looked at Angela and whispered, "You've already paid me back, my love. Every tear, every bruise, every hour you spent scrubbing floors, that was the price. And you paid it in full." Angela's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of gratitude, not despair. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt Robert's presence more strongly than ever. She's ready, I thought. She's no longer the daughter who abandoned me. She's the woman we always hoped she would become. But deep down, I knew the final test was still ahead. Because redemption isn't proven in words or tears. It's proven in choices. And soon, Angela would face a choice that would reveal whether her transformation was real or just another mask. The news came on a gray Tuesday morning. I was folding laundry when the phone rang. Mr. Peterson's voice carried a tone of quiet satisfaction. "Mrs. Brooks, Edward has been arrested in France. Fraud, falsified marriage documents, and debt evasion. He'll be deported within weeks. There's also talk of prison time." I froze, a sock dangling in my hand. So it's over? For him, yes. But for Angela, that depends on how she chooses to respond. When I hung up, Angela was in the kitchen, sipping coffee before leaving for her shift. I sat across from her, studying her tired but determined face. "Angela," I said carefully, "there's something you need to know. Edward's been arrested. He won't be coming back." Her hands shook slightly, coffee sloshing in her cup. "Arrested? For what?" "For everything. Fraud, forged signatures, fake marriage. He's facing years in prison." She stared into her cup for a long time. I braced myself for tears, rage, denial, but instead, she exhaled slowly, almost in relief. "Good," she whispered. "It's what he deserves." "You don't feel sorry for him?" I asked. Her eyes lifted to mine, steady and clear. "Mom, months ago I would have begged you to help him. I would have sold everything you own to keep him safe. But now, I see him for what he is. He didn't just betray me. He poisoned me, turned me against you, convinced me money mattered more than love. He deserves every consequence." I leaned back, astonished. My daughter was no longer shackled to him. But the true test arrived 3 days later, in the form of a letter. Angela found it in the mailbox, the French stamp still fresh. She brought it inside, her hands trembling. "It's from Edward," she said. "Should I open it?" "That's up to you," I replied. She sat at the table, tearing the envelope open with careful fingers. The letter inside was messy, desperate, written in a scrawl I barely recognized. "Angela, forgive me. I was wrong. I made mistakes. I only wanted to give us a better life. Please, wait for me. Stand by me until I'm free. You're the only person I have left." Angela read it aloud, her voice flat, stripped of emotion. When she finished, she set it down and stared at it. "Mom," she whispered, "a part of me used to live for letters like this. Begging, dramatic, full of promises. I would have run to him, no matter how much he hurt me. But now," she pushed the paper away. "Now I feel nothing. No anger, no pity, just nothing." I watched her carefully. "So what will you do?" She stood, walked to the stove, and struck a match. The flame danced in her eyes as she held the letter over the burner. In seconds, it curled and blackened, turning into ash that floated up the vent. "That chapter is over," she said firmly. "I won't waste another tear on him." For a long moment, silence filled the kitchen. I felt Robert's presence again, strong and proud. Angela had passed the final test. She turned to me, her face softer than I'd seen in years. "Mom, Edward used to tell me what I wanted to hear. You told me what I needed to hear even when it hurt. That's real love." I reached for her hand, this time not as a teacher, but as a mother. "You finally understand, Angela. Love isn't about comfort. It's about growth. And sometimes, growth comes through pain." That night, Angela went to work as usual. But when she came home, she didn't look defeated. She looked free. As she washed her hands at the sink, she said, "Mom, tomorrow's my last day at the cleaning job. Not because I'm running away from it, but because I'm ready for the next step. I want to study. I want to help women like me, women who trusted the wrong man, lost everything, and think they're alone. I want them to know they can rebuild." I felt my chest swell with pride. Robert's plan hadn't just saved our daughter, it had transformed her. The daughter who once sold our memories for cash now wanted to dedicate her life to helping others find dignity. And I knew deep in my bones that Edward's arrest wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of Angela's true life. The ocean air was crisp that morning, carrying the familiar scent of salt and pine as we drove down the winding coastal road. For years, the beach house had been nothing but a painful memory, first of joy, then of betrayal. But today, Angela and I were returning not as victims, but as women reborn. When we pulled into the driveway, Angela's breath caught. "It looks exactly the same," she whispered. The cream-colored siding, the little porch Robert built with his own hands, the garden where I once planted roses, it all stood untouched, as if waiting for us. We stepped inside together. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors, illuminating the dust motes that swirled in the air. Angela touched the banister, her fingers trembling. "I can almost hear Dad's laughter," she said. "I can smell his coffee, see his glasses on the table." Her eyes filled with tears. "Mom, I need to apologize again, not just for selling this house, but for reducing it to nothing more than a price tag. This was never just a property, it was our history. I placed my hand on hers. It's forgiven, Angela. What matters is that you see it now. That's all your father and I ever wanted. We spent the afternoon dusting furniture, scrubbing counters, and opening windows to let the sea breeze in. It felt like cleansing not just the house, but the past itself. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, we sat together on the porch Robert had built. Waves crashed in the distance, steady and eternal. "Mom," Angela began hesitantly, "I've been thinking. What if this house became something more than just ours? What if it became a refuge for women like me, women who trusted the wrong man, who lost everything, who need a place to rebuild?" I looked at her, stunned. It was the very thought that had crossed my own mind. "You mean turn it into a shelter?" She nodded. "Yes, a place where they can find safety, dignity, and maybe even a second chance. Dad always believed a house wasn't truly a home until its doors were open to others. I think he'd want this." Tears pricked my eyes. He would be proud. So very proud. In that moment, I realized Robert's legacy wasn't the fortune he had left behind. It was the love, the wisdom, the quiet strength he had instilled in us. And now, Angela was ready to carry it forward. That night, as we sat under the stars, Angela turned to me with a new light in her eyes. "Mom, I've enrolled in classes, social work. I want to dedicate my life to helping women like me. I don't ever want anyone to feel as alone as I once did." I squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore. You never were. And now, you'll make sure others aren't either." We sat in silence, listening to the waves. For the first time since Robert's death, my heart felt full not with grief, but with peace. Angela leaned against my shoulder. "Thank you, Mom. Not for the money, not for the houses, but for loving me enough to let me fall, for letting me hit the ground so I could learn to stand again." I kissed the top of her head, whispering the words Robert would have said if he were still with us. "You're stronger than you think, and you're finally free." The stars shimmered above, the ocean roared its eternal song, and I knew this was the true ending, not revenge, not punishment, but transformation. Justice had come, not through courts or money, but through love's hardest lesson. And in the end, we had both gained something far more valuable than wealth. A bond rebuilt, a future reclaimed, and a legacy of hope that would outlive us both. Did you like my story? I ask you now. And where are you listening from? Tell me in the comments, I'd love to hear. If this journey touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who needs hope today. And if you'd like to support more stories like this, you can send a super thanks. Thank you with all my love. On the screen, you'll see 2 new life stories I've chosen for you. Don't miss them, they're just as powerful. Until next time, remember, the truest revenge is growth, and the truest wealth is love.